So really the purpose of these 2 days is to come together, to have an opportunity for the superintendents in this great county to network, to figure out what we can do together as a stronger voice to ensure the needs in LA County are being met, and how we can be more intentional about that. Because we always talk about the power of one and the strength and all of that, but we really need to start thinking about how do we move that into action and become more intentional. The power of our voices, our stories, the greater weight that we can have in Sacramento and in DC to better meet our families' needs. So let's talk about our state. Here we are, California, the largest economy in the world. We are bigger than entire countries, like the United Kingdom. We have so many opportunities in California, yet we still have these serious gaps that disproportionately affect some of the populations in our county. We know for our students of color, our immigrant families, our families that are living in poverty, so many of them are underserved. And we've been talking about it for too long. We continuously talk about this achievement gap. Los Angeles County alone is the 7th largest economy in the world. Yet LA County faces a crisis of housing. All you need to do is drive anywhere in the city, and you see the impact of homelessness all over our city. The lack of affordable housing, so many of not only families, but children on the streets. The Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority's 2019 homeless count reported close to 60,000 homeless individuals in the county. Over 54,000 students experience homelessness, and you see this. You see the impact of this in our schools every single day. Child poverty in Los Angeles County remains racially segregated. There were over 10,000 children in foster care in Los Angeles County in 1819, and the majority of those children are children of color. There are Latino and Black children. And while we see a decrease in the number of children that are being incarcerated in LA County, we still continue to be #1 when it comes to incarcerating children, and I'd say adults as well. The overwhelming majority of the kids that are incarcerated, again, are children of color. 61% of the kids incarcerated are Latino, and 35% of the kids incarcerated are African American, and which is, horrible because they only represent 8% of our total student population. So again, there's that disproportionality. So what we've been talking about a lot at LACOE is how can we disrupt poverty and build equity in our communities. And we know that education is the way. We know that if our children are better educated and our families are better educated, that we're going to see better results and outcomes for them. And what we hear a lot about when we talk about education is people talking about the economic benefits. The opportunity to have a better job, the opportunity to make more money, getting that bigger paycheck, the lower rates of unemployment. Those are some of the things that we tend to think about. But research tells us that people with higher levels of education earn more and are less likely to be unemployed than those whose formal education ended with high school. But the benefits are much, much greater than the economic benefits. We all know that by getting a better education, we're also building confidence in ourselves, agency, self-sufficiency, being able to envision and realize our dreams and hopes. It's completely different and can change our circumstances. And it's not just about getting a better job or making more money. It's the opportunity to learn about academic subjects that matters to us, that engage us, that give us hope about what our future can be. And I know for me, a lot of you know my story. I didn't go to high school. I didn't understand anything about the importance of getting an education. There were 5 of us siblings. All 5 of us dropped out of school to work. I went on early, became a mother at 16, and later all of us kind of realized through hardship, through struggle, that not having an education, that impact that it had on all of our lives. So it really is about bettering our lives and bettering the lives not only for ourselves, but for our children that follow. So having 7 children, all of my 7 children, except for my son who's severely disabled, all went on to college and all have better lives. So it impacts generations when we can get our children educated. And then finally, getting a better education also means for having a longer life expectancy. So I mean, this is really serious business that we need to do. Well, we think that LA County should lead the nation in educational equity and justice. And coming from a social work background and the belief in social justice and empowerment, that's been my focus. I really think that we can lead the nation on this work. And let me tell you some strong cases for that. 1/3 of the students in California are in LA County. Of the 58 county offices of education, 48 of the 50 have less than 100,000 students. Collectively, we are responsible for educating approximately 2 million students if you include our pre-K population. And when we work together, we can make sure that we have a plan and that we're addressing a lot of the educational inequity that we see in this county. And the other thing we have to remember is people look to LA. You know, people pay attention to what's happening in Los Angeles because of our size, because of our scope. So we can really be a model nationally of what we can do to attack poverty and inequity in our district. So the equity gaps that we talked about are real, and now is a good time for us to really start thinking about increasing diversity. Thinking about our teachers and making sure that children have teachers that look like them and talk like them that they can relate to. It's anticipated that in the next few years, we're going to have a lot of teachers retiring, and we know that we already have shortages in certain areas. We have work to do, and I think that we can really think about how we can increase the pipeline and ensure that we have teachers of color becoming interested in this work and understanding that there's a place at the table for them and a strong need for them to be a part of it. So we believe in supporting this pipeline, specifically recruiting men of color and promoting diversity in both race and gender, developing a homegrown pipeline, high school to college to credentialing, is an effort that we're thinking of focusing on in public education. We need to recruit our own. We need to get people interested and excited about going into education. And the thing that I keep telling everybody, and I know that you all believe this work is difficult work, and we cannot do this work alone. We have to have the support of our partners. And when I say partners, I mean everybody that cares about kids and has a role in ensuring kids are doing well in school. A couple of days ago, I was at an event where UCLA released a new report that they have, Beyond the Schoolhouse. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see this. It was just released, and we're going to be sending it out to all of you. But one of the things that I liked about this report is that just what its name says, Beyond the Schoolhouse, it identifies what we all know is that the things that are impacting students' ability to learn and to do well in school goes beyond what's happening in our classrooms and in our schools. That there are things happening in our families, communities that have an impact. Things like environmental issues that lead to higher lead or higher cases of asthma, housing issues, poverty, So much that's going on in our communities that we cannot separate out. We can't just look at what's happening at schools without thinking about what's happening in our communities. So we'll be sharing this report with you if it hasn't already gone out. But we believe it's critical that schools and community leaders are working together to really ensure that we're leveraging all of the money that's available to support our children and families. So we're looking at creating initiatives that go beyond certain pilot projects, but turn into large-scale, community-wide education reform strategies. And in order to do this, in order to have a true impact, we need everybody working together. This is an all-hands-on-deck effort. So when we think about the impact of partnerships, some of the strategies that LACOE hopes to deepen, and we need your support in order to be able to do this, is one, expanding early childhood education opportunities. Everybody here in the room knows the importance of quality early childhood education. Right now, only 56% of our 3 to 4-year-olds have access or are enrolled in preschool in LA County. We can do much better than that, and we need to make sure that all of our young children have the opportunity to enroll in preschool. We're working with different districts as we identify funding. We are working specifically with Azusa right now and Linwood districts to make more slots available for their families, but we need to work together across the county to make sure that all of our children have access. We're also looking at early literacy, and we know, every single one of you in the room knows the importance of ensuring that children have literacy skills, that they're reading by the time that they're in 3rd grade. But we need to do something more as a county to come together on figuring out how we're going to address this. So we're developing a strategy in LA County, and we need your input. We want to learn about what you think we can do. It's one of our targets in our strategic plan, so we'll be reaching out for you to get your input on something that we can do countywide to improve early literacy. The other thing is mental health funding, and all of you know, you've been telling me over and over, and I've experienced in every district I've been at, the need that families have for more mental health services. And when I'm talking about mental health services, I'm not only talking about intervening in the event of a crisis, but I'm talking about optimal mental health and well-being for our children and families. And so there's a difference in that. We're not looking to pathologize our families or to say our children are mentally ill. We're saying we need to identify where there are issues and provide support so that our children are thriving at optimal mental health. I wanted to also let you know that the LA County Department of Mental Health intends to invest $30 million over the next 3 years in a regional prevention investment fund. $30 million, and I can tell you we are there knocking on the door saying you need to invest early and you need to invest in schools. So these funds are programming, they're focusing on offering services at parks, as I said, at schools, libraries, community centers. Some of the programming is addressing violence, supports mental health and well-being, and LACOE's role is being there with all of the county departments, but especially with the Department of Mental Health, and since they seem to have all the money right now, in saying we want schools to be the first place, the best place where you're going to invest this money. Yeah, you can applause for that. In terms of the census, California has 10 of the top 50 hard-to-count counties in the nation. The #1 hardest-to-count county in California is Los Angeles. So we are really working with our partners. We're working with all of you in getting information out to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get all of our families in LA County counted. You know that the census data is tied to funding in education. It's also tied to healthcare, housing, transportation. At all levels of government, it will have an impact. So we need to make sure that all of us are counted. And we know that schools are trusted messengers. And if we can communicate with our families, especially families right now that are fearing all the issues around immigration, we need to make sure that families know and they hear it from us that it's safe and that they need to be counted. We've also been advocating for additional money to come to schools to support the census work. We've received an additional $1.93 million for schools, and that, I want to say, a large part is because of Viviana Andrade and the work that she's been doing, saying this money needs to come to schools if you want schools to be a part of the solution. So that money will be coming to you very soon, so keep your eyes out. You'll be getting money to support this effort. And we're also hosting some training on census curriculum. There are flyers, I believe, that are outside, but those trainings are happening October 21st and 28th, and that's providing you with some curriculum that you can use in your schools to help educate our children around the census. So I want to talk a little bit about our Community Schools Initiative. When I was meeting with the Board of Supervisors and various department heads and trying to say, look, we need to get money to school and we need to get it there quick, I sold it as this is the best diversion program you can offer. If you really want to stop the pipeline to prison, if you really want to ensure that kids are in schools and not in jails, then you need to invest in our schools, not only with money, but with some of the services that are being provided throughout this county. So the Community Schools Initiative is a perfect example, I feel, of how we can collaborate with city departments, county departments, nonprofits to make sure that kids and schools are getting resources. We have a pilot right now that's being implemented, and we're using 15 school districts for our Community Schools Initiative. The 15 districts were identified based on need. And really, this initiative is all about closing the equity gap and understanding the needs of communities in poverty and building upon assets, moving away from seeing things through a deficit lens, but really building on assets. It's really, again, making sure that we're getting everyone to realize that school is the place to be support, to offer services to our kids. And many, many people know, and I'm sure you've experienced that, a lot of people care about kids and they care about education and they want to offer services. The challenge has been, it's been difficult for school districts if you don't have the staff in place to coordinate all the people that want to volunteer, that want to come to your campus, to secure parent consent, to figure out a process of referrals. I mean, that's all a lot of work to ask a principal or an assistant principal to take on. So the way we've created the model for the Community Schools Initiative is providing districts with the staff to do that. So each of these 15 pilots have a community school coordinator who's going to coordinate some of the resources that will be coming in from the various county departments and nonprofits, as well as a full-time person who's going to serve as a community parent engagement person. Because the whole philosophy around a Community Schools Initiative is not only bringing resources to schools, but also engaging students and parents and having them play a part in the leadership that's taking place at the schools. So we're really excited about this initiative. We've secured over $20 million in funding and in-kind services to support this effort. This is an example of a strategy where multiple stakeholders are coming together to address equity gaps in our communities and using schools as the hub of neighborhood services and supports. The beauty of this initiative is that we're working with 15 school districts right now, and each of those districts will look a little different depending on what the needs are of that community. But what we're hoping for is having this model serve as a model that's not only used here in Los Angeles, but across the state and the nation. And we've had conversations with our state superintendent, Tony Thurman, conversations with the governor about using this type of model. And what we want, before we even care about the rest of the state and the nation, is for every single school district in our county to have these supports and services. Because regardless of where you are in LA County, every single district in this county has a need. Even if you're serving a more affluent population, you still don't have the resources that you need to support all the children in your district. So our goal is to make sure that this gets out to every district in the county, and we're super excited to lead this work. And for those of you 15 pilots, a lot of pressure on you because the Board of Supervisors have told us that this isn't one-time money. This is ongoing money. We just need to prove that we can be effective and show some positive outcomes. And if we can do that, they've committed to scaling this out to the greater Los Angeles. So those of you who are in the pilots, we're counting on you to make sure this works. Some of our partners you can see on this list who from the county departments are so committed and eager to support our schools. I said the Department of Mental Health, they were the first to step up. They're doing not only the community schools initiatives, they're doing trauma-informed symposiums throughout our county. Many of you have participated in those. They're going to continue to do those. They're also talking about providing well-being centers, not only in the 15 pilots, but in much larger areas throughout LA County. We're working with the Department of Public Social Services, looking at food insecurity and how schools can play a greater role in making sure families have access to food. So all of these departments are really excited and want to work with all of you, and we'll be leading that work so that you don't have 80 districts trying to figure this out on their own. So for us here in California, as I said, we know that we can't do this work alone and that we have to have both public and private partners assisting us. In a state where the differences in per pupil funding across districts vary widely, where the state serves as the primary funder of K through 12 education, where we're seeing a growing number of districts struggling to meet the needs of students that they receive, you simply don't have the funding and the resources you need in order to do the work that's being demanded of you. District costs are rising faster than the state funding can keep up. And the state has taken steps to make education funding more equitable, as we know, with the local control funding formula. But California still remains lower than the national average in per pupil funding. So you all know, if you compare us to New York, where the average funding per pupil is about $23,000, and the average here in California is $12,000, there's definitely something wrong with that. And even though we expect a number of ballot propositions that aim to address public education funding on the 2020 ballot, the truth is we cannot rely solely on government funding in order to support the work that we need to do. Especially when economists are predicting a downturn in the economy, we need to get better at engaging our private funders that are ready to help to support public education. And there are a lot of them out there. People care about kids, they care about education. We just need to do a better job of tapping into that. And we also have to show accountability so people will believe that when they give money to schools and districts, that that money will be well spent and that they see the outcomes that they're hoping to see. So one of the things that we're doing to engage more of the private world and foundations to receive more money is we have a foundation that we're calling the Greater Los Angeles Education Foundation. And I want to introduce John Garcia. John, if you can stand up. Where are you, John? So John is the president of that. And many of you know John. He came from the California Community Foundation. He is very, very aware and savvy about how to get money, where to go, who to talk to, and he's out there doing that. So we're hoping to attract and secure funding from both philanthropic foundations, corporations, and individual givers. You know, in 2018, Americans gave $427 billion. This is including money from foundations, corporations, and individuals. Well, we want to be more proactive in bringing that funding to LA County to support education and other programs that will benefit our students and families. We don't think it's okay that San Francisco receives most of the state funding, more than any other county, when they have significantly less students and people living in their city. No disrespect to San Francisco, but we have a lot of needs here in LA County. That holds true for federal funding as well. LA gets less money than San Francisco, than San Diego, and Orange County. Something's wrong with this picture. And so we need to make sure that we're working hard to say the need is here in LA County, the number of students and families are here in LA County, and the money that goes out needs to reflect that. So we're rebranding LACOE's foundation. As I said, it's going to be called the Greater Los Angeles Education Foundation. And the focus is really on strategic partnerships and innovative solutions that we can bring to our schools. We're talking about transformative approaches that will improve student outcomes, student development, looking at the whole child, looking at families, communities. So the Community Schools Initiative is just one example, but we want to work with you to think about other types of initiatives that we can bring to the county that will bring money that we can then send out to your districts to ensure that you have the resources that you need in order to get the job done. So we've received, these are some of our foundation partners that we've received some initial investments, and we're going to go out for a lot more. These are big foundations, and some of them have said, we're going to give you this money, this is a start, see what you can do with it, and make sure you come back and ask for more. So we're being very strategic about who we're asking and what we're going to do with it. And as I said, the most important thing for me is when we're asking for money, we better make sure that we're going to be accountable. Because sometimes districts, counties, we have a bad reputation of givers feeling like we give and give and give, and we don't see the outcomes that we want to see. So we need to be coordinated, we need to have comprehensive plans, we need to be sure that we're measuring and evaluating and that we're seeing the results that we want to see in order for us to bring in more dollars. And again, that's why I keep saying the strength that we have as a county is the strength of our numbers, the scope, the scale of who we are. And in order for us to take advantage of that, we really need to make sure that we need to work together. And although we're a very diverse county with a lot of different needs, there are certainly some things that we can all agree on, some things that we can focus on. We're all facing challenges with special education and the limited resources that we're receiving to make sure we're serving those children, addressing the mental health students, addressing the mental health of our students and families, safety issues, aging facilities. There are so many opportunities of things that we can focus on together to ensure that we're getting the money. So we want to make sure we're coming together with one voice. So these times that we have where we're seeing an increase in school violence, an increase in suicidal ideation, and actually even suicide completion, I mean, these are all things that are on the rise here in our county, and it's impacting our communities. All of our students are dealing with a different world than the world that we grew up in. Let's just face that. With social media, with the access to drugs, there is so much going on right now in our communities. I had someone tell me about this show that's on HBO called Euphoria. I don't know if any of you have seen that. I saw the first episode, and I thought, thank God my kids are grown up. The amount of sex, drugs, internet access, trafficking, I mean, it's really scary out there. The other thing that we're facing right now with this whole anti-immigrant climate that we're in, which is very, very sad, is creating so much fear around our immigrant communities. And it's really an issue, and we all have to think about how we're going to communicate with our families so that they're not afraid to take advantage of the resources that are available to them because they're afraid of public charge. They're getting mixed messages about what that means if they accept services for even their children who are U.S. citizens. We also have seen a lot with what's referred to as our Asian parachute students. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but the number of families that are sending their children from China to the U.S. to receive a high school education, and these children are oftentimes just placed into schools without any real parental oversight. I know that a few years back, I had a Chinese student living with me who was going to high school, and we took that very seriously, you know, making sure that he was fed, that he was part of our family, that we took him to school, that we were engaged in his school parent meetings and conferences. But there are a lot of people that are just setting up businesses and that are taking advantage of these children and not providing proper oversight, proper shelter, proper food, and kids are being abused, and it's really, really sad. So these are all things that, you know better than I that we're all facing, and what our hope today is to come together, talk later about the issues that are impacting all of you, and coming up with some ideas of what are the key areas that when our legislators are here, or that when LACOE's going up to Sacramento or to DC, that we can do that with one united voice, with all of you telling us how we can better meet the needs of the kids that you're serving and the families that you're serving in your communities. So I want to again thank you all for being here. We got a full day ahead of us, and I'm glad to be serving and working alongside of you. Thank you.